Good afternoon and welcome. This is Sunyoung Oh, graduate research assistant and doctoral student at UCEA headquarters at Michigan State University. I'm here today to interview Dr. Irene Yoon as a part of her candidacy for the UCEA Executive Committee. Today, listeners will be hearing from Dr. Yoon, an associate professor at University of Utah. Her research is concerned with dignity and belonging for students of color in racially diverse schools. Welcome, Dr. Yoon.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, talking with me today.
Thank you. Let's begin with the first question. Please tell us about your background and your work as it related to UCA's mission and goals.
Yeah, so as you noted, my work is concerned with dignity and belonging. The way that I think about it is how it is that schools become humanizing learning environments. So, words are sort of imperfect, but ways that inclusion is core to the school's culture and the ways that leadership and professional learning are part of making that happen. So some of my research, the research began with district-wide instructional improvement that was conducted with third-party external support providers. And that was as a doctoral student. And I started to think about how it is that instructional improvement needs to include teachers' awareness of the ways that they construct their own working environments and their professional learning through collaboration. So my dissertation examined the construction of middle-class white womanhood among teachers and in their teacher teams and also in their classrooms in racially diverse schools. And after my dissertation, I worked at the Utah Education Policy Center as a research associate, and I was part of the school improvement team there. So I was a third-party support provider for schools that were going through turnaround because of accountability policies. And through all of those experiences as a research assistant, my dissertation, and also as a school improvement support provider, I just noticed how much talk and time was spent on behavior and on pathologizing behaviors that seemed a lot to do with trauma. And for the most part, I also was concerned with instruction in special education classrooms and the ways that special education inclusion does and doesn't happen in authentic ways. So that has led to my current research, which is interested in looking at building some of that meaningful or authentic inclusion, full inclusion school-wide for students of color with emotional and behavioral disabilities. And I use sociological hauntings as a theoretical framework to examine the leadership and also the ways that transgenerational trauma has really shaped or become a force behind efforts to transform. So the way that I think about that as related to UCEA is that all of my work is either directly about leadership or has strong implications for leadership. So the topics of my research are either what leaders are doing or about what's going on in schools that leaders have a key role in influencing.
Great. You have served for several years as a plenary session representative. Please tell us about your engagement in UCA's governance.
Yes, so I was a plenum rep. This is my 6th year. I was a plenum rep for 3 years, and then I took a 2-year break, and I've been back on for, I've been for 2 years, and this is my 3rd for the 2nd round. So initially, I was on the plenum to learn more about UCEA. I've been part of the communication roles and also making sure that faculty and students knew about UCEA programs. As the plenum rep, I also was engaged in the NIC, the Networked Improvement Communities, where my department was invested in building partnerships. Partnership work is something that's really central to my research methods, and it's also part of my professional background. And so we participated through that, and I helped lead our department's team on that effort. And so as a plenum rep, I've really played that linking role. And yeah, it kind of goes into what I know is the next question, but I'm going to wait for you to ask it.
Okay, thank you. Next, in what other ways have you been engaged in UCEA?
Yeah, so I am like, I don't know why or how this happened exactly, but I've sort of been like just really a hardcore dedicated UCEA fan. So I started as a graduate student attending the conference, and then was nominated as a Jackson Scholar by my institution. And it was, I think, through Jackson Scholars that I realized, you know, UCEA might be a place or like an academic community for me. I'd often felt sort of in between worlds because I was using a lot of critical theories along with sociocultural learning theories of situated like practices. And I was interested in teacher learning and teacher collaboration, but at the time, it wasn't really directly framed as an issue of school leadership. And so I always felt kind of not sure who my people were. And I think in Jackson Scholars, I just met people who really understood that, understood my research and were interested in, this sounds kind of silly, but interested in being like my friend and colleague. And so I met other great Jackson Scholars and faculty through Jackson Scholars. And since then, now I've been on the advisory board for the network, and I've participated. I was on the program committee for the annual convention in San Diego with Monica Bern Jimenez when she was president-elect. I have also been involved in creating an Asian American SIG, which is coming now this year soon. So if you're an Asian American, Pacific Islander, South Asian, Asian immigrant, Asian international student, second, third, fourth gen Asian American, whatever it is, I'm interested in building a network of support and connection and research within UCEA for us. So I think those are the big ones. I'm also an associate editor on a UCEA journal, Educational Administration Quarterly. And yeah, as PSR, I facilitate our department's nominations of graduate students. I often bring graduate students or support them to have their papers presented at the conference. I just try to make sure that people find their place at UCEA because I think that was a really big reason why I felt UCEA welcomed me.
Thank you so much. Then please discuss your scholarship, research projects, teaching, and or service that can confirm the work of UCEA, particularly the work of the executive committee.
Yeah, so I know currently that there are a couple of things that I think would be really fun if I were on the executive committee. I think I'm not sure what the content is or the findings of the UCEA equity audit, but I know that the EC has been engaged in that. And I think I would really be interested in thinking about what does UCEA do next and how does UCEA lead out on, for example, making sure that inclusion is centered, that disabilities become part of the way that UCEA thinks about social justice and the ways that collective access principles can be built into UCEA website and events and culture, as well as research. And I think that my research project, so one that I have proposed right now is called Leadership Love Letters in Dangerous Times, and it builds off of an article that I co-authored with Monica Bern Jimenez about leadership as an act of love and offering a framework for what it means for love to really be centered as an organizing framework for leaders. And that piece has really engaged a lot of practitioners through, especially through coursework. And I think that what I'd like this Leadership Love Letters project to do is it's focused on faculty of color and focusing on faculty with marginalized identities who, you know, in our institutions, in our own departments, as UCEA institutions, you know, we do all this amazing work on leadership preparation and graduate student development, but we don't yet do that with our faculty and with our own departments. And so I'd like to see, you know, we have such rich practice of leadership development, leadership learning, and to be able to connect that to our own ways of working and transforming us from the inside, from like our own marrow. You know, it's going to be hard to really sustain the changes and improvements of more diverse representation in our graduate programs and in our leadership preparation programs if we don't also think about the systems that are responsible for preparing and supporting those leaders and graduate students. So that's like one direct connection. I also do a lot of facilitation of professional learning, and I think that that is something that maybe something could be valuable for the EC if they are, you know, going on site visits or maybe, I don't know, in the plenum. Yeah, I do. My research is very interdisciplinary. It's very broad ranging. The theories that I use, the literature that I cite, it's academic, but there's also a lot of non-academic works from activists and artists. And so I think that that's something that could also inform our leadership preparation and our research. The ways that we communicate who we are, and the ways that we engage with each other, you know, whether it's at the convention or on Zoom calls or whatever it is. So.
Thank you. Then let's move on to the last question. Could you share the reasons why you have chosen to run for the UCA Executive Committee and your vision for the future of UCA?
Yeah, I think I would appreciate being on the executive committee first as an act of service, because I feel like UCEA has been such a big part of my own development and success as a scholar and as a teacher. And I think also as a member on the plenum, I am sort of among the better informed about what the UCEA Executive Committee does, but I'd really hope to be part of thinking about transparency and inclusion with the plenum and also with UCEA members and non-members writ large, you know, like faculty who aren't members at member institutions, for example. For the future of UCEA, I mentioned collective access, and I'd really love to think about how collective access, which is intersectional, really drives the ways we think about how UCEA cannot move forward unless everybody can move forward. And I think that part of my vision or my imagining for the future is ways that UCEA can be leaders among our member organizations, our member institutions. UCEA is a really big player in leadership preparation and policy. And I think that from what I've observed, it could be that I just am not informed, but I would love to see UCEA play a bigger role on influencing our campuses. And then for UCEA, for part of that to include faculty development and support. And then I had one other thing that I wanted to talk about for the future. Oh, yeah. So I'd love also for UCEA to actively do a little bit more with practitioners and policymakers and other partners. I think many of us do really rich, deep partnership work, and we really should and could be listening to practitioners, as well as making sure that practitioners attend our conferences and know us as people so that they can engage with our research and can feel like we are people who they can reach out to, and we are people who do work that matters to their workplaces, to their faculty, and to their leadership. So I think we do a lot with those partnerships and connections, but I think having some of a better process and like more, I guess, authentic exchange and presence would be really wonderful for UCEA. It's changed a lot even since I was a graduate student, and I really love the changes that I've been, able to observe. And I hope that I could be part of doing even more. So thank you.
Thank you for your time and thoughtful response, Dr. Yoon.
Thanks so much for interviewing me, Sun-young.
Thank you again. This interview will be archived on the UCA YouTube channel. Listeners can access or share the interview at any time. We also encourage listeners to post comments and questions on this interview in the comment section. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.